that 4% who gets admitted versus the 96% of qualified students who don't get admitted. What is it? What is the key factor that really differentiates this decision?
Sure. That's going to look very different for every student. I will say that there's a term that is used, and that's the distinguishing excellence.
Welcome to the Vision interview. We have a special guest today, Mr. Abdiel Garcia, who is the former admissions officer from Harvard University. To be more specific, Harvard College, the undergraduate school. So Abdiel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So to start off, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your career?
Yeah, so my name is Abdiel, and I am a former admissions officer at Harvard College. I was there from 2015 to 2020. And during my time there, I read a little over 8,000 applications. Currently, I work at a company called EAB, which is an education research and consulting company based in Washington, D.C. Within EAB, I work on a few projects, including I'm a member of the Greenlight Enrollment Collaborative, which is a forum of admissions deans and VPs, vice presidents of enrollment, from 30 or so of some of the most selective universities in the U.S., such as Princeton and Boston University and some of the other Ivies. And we basically work with them in terms of their enrollment strategy and other things like that.
So basically, you have a lot of experience with not only with Harvard, but understanding, what goes on in so many other top universities in the U.S.
That's right.
All right. So can you tell me a little bit about how the admissions is kind of set up, who works there and how things kind of work in there for Harvard?
Sure, yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about leadership, and then from there. So the Dean of Admissions is currently William Fitzsimmons. He's been the dean there for many decades, and Joy St. John is the Director of Admission. So that's the leadership, and then there is the admissions team comprises of about 45 individuals who read applications, who are voting members of the admissions committee. And I can tell you a little bit about the structure too. So everyone is assigned a region or a territory, and they are the primary readers for that region. And so we divide the country, the world, into what we call dockets. And so those are basically just geographic regions. And there's about 15, 18 of those dockets around the world.
Mm-hmm. And how about the Asia docket?
Yeah.
Is that one of the bigger dockets?
Yeah, so Asia is its own docket, and every year we receive many applications from the Asia docket as well.
Mm-hmm. So what people are really curious about is, about the admissions process, right? So once I submit my app, who reads it? How does it flow?
Sure. When a student clicks submit and all their application materials are in, you have a complete application. From there is a first reader, the assigned territory manager. That admissions officer does the initial read of an application. From there, as the more competitive apps get passed on to a second reader, who is typically a more senior admissions officer. And from there are subcommittee meetings. So these comprise of about 5 or 6 admission officers who are in charge of a wider geographic region. That's the docket. And so there, every application it goes through a decision, a preliminary decision, but the subcommittee really focuses more on those competitive applications or those that might be more on the edge. And then there is a final round known as final committee, where the entire admissions committee meets and makes those final decisions.
Let's talk about the evaluation criteria. I think a lot of people are very curious about, how am I going to be rated, right? Because a lot of students and parents, they care a lot about, I want the best rating possible. How do you actually evaluate students? How does the ratings really work? And is there another layer to it or whatnot? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the rating system is on a 1 to 6 scale, 1 being the most competitive. And so we could divide it into 3 components, academics, extracurriculars, and personal qualities. And so for each of those, we are looking to see, so let's start with the academics, right? So there, we're looking at GPA, test scores, the rigor of classes that students are taking. Now, mind you that at a school like Harvard, most students that are applying have top academic credentials. So having really strong credentials across the board isn't necessarily going to get you a 1 or that top score. Neither do you need that to get into a school like Harvard? But what pushes students kind of towards that top score are a few things, like the originality and the depth of their intellectual ideas and curiosity and their level of involvement. So that could be pursuing original work, whether it's research or a specific project that they're doing, or maybe they've really maximized academic opportunities at their school or in their community. And then with extracurricular activities, similarly, we're looking at kind of the whole spectrum of involvement. Not just, that could be official clubs, that could be personal hobbies or pursuits. So that is all great to see. I think where students really distinguish themselves is, again, through that depth of involvement. So a good word to use here is impact, right? So whether that's at the school level, at the regional level, even at the national or international level, that students' involvement is really kind of having that greater reach and impact. And then lastly, with personal qualities, that really is getting at just getting to know the person, right, beyond the achievements. So Harvard College is a community of learners and contributors and collaborators. And so the school really wants to see that students can engage well with others. Maybe there might be differences of opinions, but can students collaborate, right? Maybe you are rooming with someone from a different part of the world, but can you get along, right? Can you meet each other in the middle? And so I think with the personal qualities, that's what we're looking at, not just from the students' perspective, application, but also from the letters of recommendation.
So basically, this was a question one of the parents actually asked. If my kid was a valedictorian at my school and, won a big international award and also, involved in some kind of big service, like a basically very nice person, like humanitarian, why wouldn't I get a 1 across the board, right? Can you give me some example why someone wouldn't get a 1 with all those kind of specifications or credentials that he or she has?
So that's a great question. I think that those kinds of involvements and credentials are great to see. And students like that are certainly admitted to schools like Harvard. But there's kind of a nuance there. I think a 1 really represents something not just exceptional, but rare and truly above and beyond, right? So a student might have awards under their belt, but at a school like Harvard, this is a school that is receiving applications from around the world, typically students who are the best of the best, so to speak, right? Whether that's in their school, whether that's in their country. And so we are looking at that global scale. And so for a student to receive a 1, they would have to be doing something that truly is exceptional, not just within their context, but within the Harvard application pool.
Mm-hmm. So basically, there are a lot of students, like you said, with really good GPA, high awards, great leadership positions, applying to schools like Harvard. But you have to ultimately deny over 90% of those students. So, if you were to pinpoint something that's beyond just the rating, right? That one factor that really differentiates that 4% who gets admitted versus the 96% of qualified students who don't get admitted, what is it? What is that key factor that really differentiates this decision?
Sure. That's going to look very different for every student. I will say that there's a term that is used, and that's the distinguishing excellence, right? different schools might call it different things, but at Harvard, what that DE really is getting at is that it factor, right? Like that thing that it makes you stand out above others. I'll give you kind of more context into that. That is not just having great test scores and being valedictorian. If you think about it, there's thousands and thousands of high schools around the world, and they all have each school would have a valedictorian. So that alone isn't a key differentiator. I think it's really about the depth, which I mentioned earlier, of involvement, but also the originality. To give you an example, I remember reviewing a student who was an advocate at a national level for gun control, right? And made a tremendous impact in the U.S. at a national level. So again, that is kind of that above and beyond, right? And so I also had a student who was a national poet laureate in high school, the first youth poet laureate. And so that, again, was a distinguishing excellence that was not very common to see as an achievement in the applicant pool. I've also seen students pursue original research, right? And so those are kind of examples of what that distinguishing excellence might be. It's not just in one academic area or activity.
Right. So it seems like something just simple numbers cannot define, right? Either you find the problem, serious problem you want to solve for the society, or you find your own passion that you're really kind of all in about. So that's really good to hear. So now, there are a lot of students hoping to, apply to, Harvard and hoping to get in. And they're curious about any noticeable trends or, what changes are happening at Harvard. Can you tell us about the recent changes or trends?
So yeah, one of the updates is that Harvard College recently appointed a new dean. And his name is David Deming, and he is a researcher, particularly in the areas of inequality and poverty. And so, but beyond that, in the academics, Harvard also has been investing more in AI and the computing sciences. And so there's been investments in that, including the propping up a new initiative for AI studies. And then in addition to that, there is an urban studies track within the humanities that is now available to students. Generally, though, Harvard continues to do more to encourage interdisciplinary education. So there's been some changes around making it easier for students to double major, follow to concentrations, as they're called.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear. So it sounds like Harvard is looking for students who can understand that the world is not perfect. They want to kind of contribute for our community and be able to find solutions to these complex problems through interdisciplinary studies.
I think that's about right. Yeah, Harvard is a place, a community for problem solvers, and so you see that in a lot of these new initiatives, staying current with the pressing issues that we see in the world today, and really encouraging students, equipping them with the tools and resources to pursue those.
Mm-hmm. Is there any message or advice you'd like to share with our audience in Asia or in the US or globally? Yeah.
Sure. The process is, I'm very aware that it can be stressful and complicated. One of the things I could just encourage students to think about is that they have a lot of agency in this process. I think one common misconception is that you have to fit a mold to be attractive to a school, to be competitive to a school like Harvard. And I would kind of have students reconsider that. Like, what are you interested in? And have that be your North Star, right? Because that actually is going to benefit you in that you are going to be able to, pursue things with genuine interest, which will come through in your application, and also will help you better find the schools that'll be the right match for you. Also, I would tell students to really think about the relationships that they're developing in their school and in their community. Again, the college experience is largely about building relationships, right? And being in community. And so in high school, get to know your teachers, get to know your counselors. They are, after all, going to be some of your biggest advocates in the admissions process.
Right. So that was really insightful. I feel like, we have learned so much about how Harvard tries to understand each and every applicant in great depth. So thank you so much for sharing your insight. And we hope to have you here again in the near future.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right.